Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be recapping start to finish everything that goes inside of our brand guidelines and why you need the brand guidelines. This is going to be exhaustive, but hopefully we'll be able to attach the visuals for the YouTube version. So head on over to YouTube if you want to see page for page what I'm talking about. I'm going to use an example from a recent project that we're working on called Amador Wine Country. We're really excited to share about this project, but I really want to use this as an example to send to future clients about how useful this document is and how this can be the brand Bible of your dreams to really help anyone who is getting onboarded with your brand understand how your branding is supposed to look and function and work with you as you continue to grow your business.
Kiss my aesthetic, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Okay, so brand guidelines. What the heck are brand guidelines? Brand guidelines are a multi-page PDF document that tell anyone, total stranger, how the brand functions visually across all the different touch points, what all the pieces and parts are, and how they get executed. For someone who is like a solopreneur or small business that's like not really needing all of this might feel very overwhelming. This might be overkill, especially if you're in those first 1 to 5 years of business. When brand guidelines become really handy is when you have multiple team members, you have multiple touch points. So digital, social, web, print, you have a brick and mortar, etc. And anytime that you're looking to like grow and scale to work with other outside partners. So brand guidelines are part of our full service brand design offering. This is kind of the big deliverable besides the actual assets. And what I'm going to do in this episode is really break down for you what goes on what pages, why it's in there, etc. Something to think about with brand guidelines is that they are a living, breathing document. As your brand changes and evolves, you may need to revisit this and add more stuff to it. That's very possible. But really what this should do is recap all of the design decisions that were made in order to execute your branding and set expectations for how that brand is supposed to function. Brand guidelines can end up being absolute mammoth undertakings. So if you go and just Google like corporate brand guidelines and pull up some examples, you'll notice that there are some brands that have 80, 90, 150 page long brand guidelines. That to me is overkill. So you won't see that here. And there's a lot of designers that make brand guidelines with like entire pages that just have one sentence. And I find that to be really stupid. So in my brand guidelines, I'm trying to keep it as short and succinct as possible while still recapping all the information that you might need. So there is kind of that middle ground there. There's that, figure out what works for you. We also build all of our brand guidelines in Canva because we are using Canva for the brand presentation. It makes it very easy to create the brand guidelines in Canva by using a lot of the same elements. Also, that it makes it easy for us to share with the client so that they can go in and let's say they end up going with a different Pantone color. They can go in and make that adjustment to the page. Exactly. So that's what we do. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see we have a beautiful cover page. And that's kind of how we get started. It's just a cover page, logo, maybe some kind of background element or texture image to kind of kick us off. Then we'll have like branding guidelines. I'm going to be Creative Co at the bottom. Table of contents, self-explanatory. But then as we get into the sections of the brand guideline, I want you to pay attention to how this is organized. So we basically are mimicking the way that we approach the branding project. First is about the brand. Second, mood board and photo guidelines, fonts and colors, logos and usage, brand assets, client gifting, print collateral, social collateral. That may look different depending on your brand. If you have merchandise, we might have a page just for merchandise. If you have a storefront, we might have a page that just says signage and storefront. There are some pages that are flex here, but generally this is how we will structure them, is like strategy, copy, imagery, then logos and colors, then how all of that gets executed out, all the supporting assets, patterns, icons, GIFs, etc. You all know how much I love a brag-worthy brand, and when it comes to creating stickers and labels that elevate your branding, Sticker Giant is the brand that you can trust. Whether you're looking to create something for fun for your next launch, elevate your brand, or add a little extra flair to your packaging, Sticker Giant's custom stickers and labels help your brand get noticed in all the right ways. They've got a dedicated team handling every detail, so you can count on Sticker Giant to bring your designs to life just the way that you imagined. And Sticker Giant stickers and labels are proudly made in the US of A. If you're ready to give your brand that extra boost, go to stickergiant.com and use promo code KMA25 for 25% off your first order. Sticker Giant, your partner in the sticker and label business. So, first one, brand recipe. If you've been listening to my prior podcast episodes, you'll know that the brand recipe is something that comes about in our design process as a confirmation of the long form brand questionnaire. So we ask a bajillion gazillion questions in our brand questionnaire. That'll get loaded into a ChatGPT channel. That ChatGPT channel then helps us write the copy for the brand recipe. Brand recipe page should include our mission, vision, brand adjectives, and all of that good, juicy stuff that helps lay the foundation for the company. So your mission statement, remember, is who you are, what you do, who you help, and how you help them. Your vision statement is those hoorahs. Those are the why. That's the emotional appeal. That's the kind of information that someone who is trying to find out about how to work with you or for you is going to really resonate with those statements. Those are the vision statements. Then lastly, brand adjectives. To build this out even more robust, we could add demographic information. We could also add core values, for example. But to keep it short and sweet, mission, vision, brand adjectives. The next page gets us into the mood board and the aesthetics. Mood boards for us is a grid of 9 images that could be textures, photography, illustration, etc. And what we do as the write-up alongside the mood board and aesthetics is really describe why we've defined the aesthetics in this way. So I'm going to use this example of Amador Wine Country. So Amador Wine Country's aesthetic is a soulful blend of California's pioneering spirit and enduring charm of the Sierra foothills. Our imagery captures honest beauty of sun-draped vineyards, winding dirt roads, and the quiet rhythm of rural life. Each visual detail reflects the craft and community that define this region, from the hands of the winemakers tending to old vines to weathered barrels resting in stone-walled cellars. Golden light spills across harvest tables and hillside picnics, while textured linens and natural materials set the tone for warm, welcoming connection. Amador is both landscape and lifestyle, rugged in its beauty and rich in character. We combine grounded authenticity with refined simplicity, offering a wine country experience that feels both intimate and expansive. Amador Wine Country invites visitors to slow down, sip with intention, and discover a region shaped by legacy land and the quiet magic of the foothills. This is the storytelling, right? This is where we're setting the scene. Imagine this is like the back cover of the novel about the place, right? So that's where you really want to start to lay the foundation for the branding is in the mood board and aesthetics page as a way to mobilize those brand values, those brand adjectives that you saw on the previous page. Next, into some more tactical, useful information would be our color palette page. So this is where it's going to be really important to include not only the hex code, but the Pantone color, the CMYK and RGB for your brand colors, the tints and shades of those colors, your accent colors, and explain the usage of all of these things. So on the top of the page, we have also a description about why we picked the colors for the color palette. So on this example, the color palette for Amador Wine Country reflects the rich layered beauty of the Sierra foothills, rooted in earthy neutrals like parchment walnut and steel, evoking rustic charm and heritage. Accents like warm gold and deep red Barbera bring warmth and depth, while tones like grape leaf, midnight glass, and offer a natural contrast and a sense of grounded elegance. The palette blends old world richness with modern refinement, ideal for a brand steeped in tradition yet looking towards the future. So, flowery language, right? You might read that and think that it sounds a little bit like a real estate postcard. That's kind of on purpose. This is explaining why we selected the colors and how the colors reflect the values. Then we will write a little write-up for how the colors are supposed to be used, dictating main colors versus accent colors. Main colors should be used for backgrounds and typography, large design elements to establish consistency and heritage, whereas the accent colors are going to be used for buttons, highlights, small details, or even to call attention to specific spin-off events or efforts or activations. That's really important because not everyone who picks up the brand guidelines is going to understand the difference between main brand colors and accent colors. And so you want to have this document, especially as your marketing director or your PR team, etc., is making flyers or posts or anything like that relating to the business, you want to say like, hey, these are the brand colors and these are the ones that we stick in. And when we have a special event or we have a special effort, then you can use the accent colors. So having those rules and guidelines in a book written out, materialized, is a great way to kind of check up on all those agents that are acting on behalf of the company. Next, we like to get into photography guidelines. And the reason I like to include this in brand guidelines is I want a quick summarized version of expectations to be given to photographers and videographers on behalf of the brand. So we've kind of shimmied out 3 different categories of imagery that we might need on behalf of Amador Wine Country, specific to this project, right? So we have lifestyle and hospitality photography, we have landscape and sense of place photography, and then we have craft and process. So any given shoot, I would want to make sure that the photographer has either experience or that we have multiple photographers that are shooting different types of imagery because those will be most useful to the brand. So under each of those is also a description of why and how and what we're looking for when it comes to lifestyle versus landscape versus craft and process photography. So details. And in that, for example, lifestyle and hospitality, capturing relaxed, candid moments of wine tastings, group gatherings, and slow living, natural golden light to help create warmth and softness. Style should feel documentary, honest, and unposed, inviting viewers into the experience. It's really important to include visual examples in this. So I've got, a few different options of like capturing like a cheersing moment that's really natural, or like wine and grapes kind of like staged on this bench that feels really not overly produced. Then for landscape and sense of place, really showcasing the rugged beauty of the area, the rolling vineyards, the oak trees, the dirt roads, the stone buildings. This is should be shot in morning or evening golden hour lights and keeping with like a cinematic composition, wide angle, really taking in the whole of the place is going to be really important here. So again, different than lifestyle and hospitality photography, landscape and history photography should feel more cinematic, more warm, more golden, less unposed or candid. Maybe those shots are a bit more orchestrated. Then lastly, the more detailed photography that's showcasing craft and process is going to highlight the artistry. So I want to see texture, I want to see detail, I want to see things that feel historical or almost timeless, and that's going to come across in the craft and the process. So how we might adapt this for your brand, or as a designer, how you could do this for your clients, is figure out what are the different types of photography that brand is going to need, and how can you set up the expectations for how that gets executed so that you have consistency regardless of who you're trying to hire to get that done. That leads into our shot lists. So for this project specifically, you have the brand overarching, and then that brand has specific events that they run throughout the year that have even different expectations. But for the purpose of this episode, I'm going to just go over evergreen photography. So remember, evergreen photography is the photography that's most consistent with the branding that's going to be used year round, that's going to be used evergreen to communicate the brand values. So even in this page, I have a description of what evergreen photo and video is. So it refers to assets that are timeless, brand-forward visuals to be used year-round across marketing platforms. These shots should avoid seasonal cues or date-specific events and instead highlight the core of the brand experience, products, people, and sense of place. In this, I want to make sure that I have settings and styling guidelines. There's the lighting notes. Here's what the style should be. Here's the gear that we're looking for. Here's the tone, the composition, and the editing. And then to the kind of right-hand side of the page, I have like, here's a shot list specifically for lifestyle, specifically for landscape, and specifically for craft and process. So each of those is then also reflecting kind of that imagery mood board from the page prior. Then you can get really nitty-gritty and do the same thing for the event-specific stuff. But for the purpose of this episode, we'll keep going. Font system would be the next thing in kind of the defining the brand aesthetics section. So we want to outline what are the H1, H2, body, button, and accent fonts. I think you don't need more fonts than that. That is plenty number of fonts. And when selecting fonts, which is something that we do in the brand process, we want to make sure that they support the main logo and don't compete with the main logo. So oftentimes I'll select an H1 font that has a lot of complementary elements, but doesn't look like an exact copy of the logo so that the logo can really stand on its own 2 feet. So here we've got our H1, we've got the font named. We've got also an example paragraph to the side. So I've got Welcome to Amador, Heritage, and High Elevation Wines, showing how all these fonts work together, represent themselves kind of on their own legs. But I've also noted here the size and the specifications for each font. So for example, our H1 should always be an uppercase sized minimum at 0.30 font with a spacing of 50 points. So you can really get into the nitty-gritty with this and start laying this out again so that any of those outside partners, marketing directors, PR, sales, anyone that's like coming into the Canva account to make content should be using this as a guideline. I also have a description for like why and how we selected the fonts that we did. I think that is really useful for the brand purpose as well, to have that kind of background and explainer as to why the fonts were selected. Then we get into the main logo design. This is a page where we want to show all the different color combinations of the logo as well as the clear space around the logo. I used to be one of those designers that would also create a whole page of like usage don'ts, don't skew it, don't add a background, don't add a gradient, da 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 da. I think that's overkill, honestly, in a brand guide, just to explain how it's supposed to be used and show how it's supposed to be used. So here I've got kind of a descriptor. Amador Wine Country logo is a nod to rich heritage of craftsmanship and charm. Amador is set in a bold, expressive serif with playful curves and flair detailed, echoing its Gold Rush legacy. Below, Wine Country appears in the clean, all caps, sans serif that adds clarity while preserving painterly warmth. The pairing reflects the balance of rustic roots and elevated approachable elegance. So, describing the logo so that they can talk about it, but also showcasing how the logo is supposed to be used. So, it's the primary visual identifier and should be used consistently across all platforms. Always keep in its original colors as seen here, right? And avoid any distortion overlays. Main clear space around the logo for visibility and approved variations for different backgrounds as shown. So really just showing how it's supposed to look. I think people are smart enough to figure out like that they shouldn't be doing the logo in bright purple if that's not part of the brand guide. Moving on, we also want to lay out and name each of the supporting logos. So the main logo is going to be used for all the brand communications, but all of the different versions, the favicon, the submark, the badge, the horizontal, the expanded, the vertical version, like those assets should be labeled the same way that they are labeled on the Google Drive. So this is really important, is making sure that the brand guideline, again, is the kind of like directory for where all the assets live and how they function. So we really need to make sure here that they are labeled as they are in the Google Drive. Same goes for Canva, right? Making sure that all these logos are added in. So when someone says, oh, I need the badge logo, we know which badge logo we're talking about. Oh, I need the expanded. Can someone get me the expanded logo to send to the sign guy? They know what we're talking about. So making sure that we have that kind of nomenclature within the brand guideline is really important. Then into badges and illustration, same thing here, making sure that you're labeling out and naming out what the things are and how they're supposed to work is going to be most important for how the brand continues to evolve and how the teams are then able to implement the branding on behalf of the company. Same would go for brand patterns. At the time of recording, we don't have that page added in yet because we are still waiting for client feedback on patterns. But patterns and icons are another place to really help explain design style and how design style communicates the brand mission, vision, goals, adjectives, etc. So this is where you'd get into the details of like why you've selected the patterns, why you've created the icons the way that you did, the illustrations the way that you did, what that does to help carry forward the ideas of the brand. Then I like to include a page, typically print, digital, social, merch, the different pages to kind of round out the brand guidelines. Here we have the print design page, and I want to really call out why the stuff is designed the way that it is. So here we have a description of print collateral. Granted, this business is going to do more than just what you see here. They're going to have more than just a postcard, a letterhead, business cards, and a binder, right? They're probably going to have more, print newspaper ads, print magazine ads, print door hangers. Like there will be other things. But the point of including this in the brand guideline is to give a kind of North Star and a stylistic litmus test for how the brand executes in print. So here I have every printed piece should reflect the brand's warmth, heritage-inspired aesthetic through unified typography, color palette, and tone of voice, consistent use of textures, linocut style illustrations, and logo variations ensures that each item feels connected to the larger identity. This attention to detail builds trust and creates a sense of place that audiences will remember. So, showcasing it not only visually, but describing it written is really important to make sure that people feel like, okay, does this match our guidelines or does this not match the guidelines? Same goes for social media. So, Amador Wine Country branding focuses on visual and verbal consistency to build a recognizable look and feel. Social profiles should use the same profile image across all platforms, and general styling to keep consistency. Content should highlight vineyard views, behind the scenes moments, local events, and a cohesive color palette and typography and editorial photography style. Captions should be friendly, informed, reinforcing the role as approachable experts. So what you'll see here is like the mock-ups, right? So the mock-ups of the Instagram page, the Instagram post, the Facebook page, the LinkedIn, etc. And then I like to include just kind of like some content recommendations of like, here's where you could go with the content, having seen like what it visually should look and feel like. Next, we get into digital collateral. So digital could mean a lot of things. It could be your website mockup. It could be your GIF designs, which is what we've included here, a Spotify playlist, which I love, and then things like email signature, right? Stuff that exists digitally but helps communicate the brand ongoing. And then lastly, for this project specifically, we have event collateral. So typically it would be print, digital, social, merch. Here I've got merch, but it's more specific to events. This brand hosts different events ongoing throughout the year, different types of events. So we want to make sure that in the brand guidelines, we're including how that brand gets executed for those different things. So I've definitely built out brand guidelines before where the supporting brands have their own like chapters within the brand guidelines, for example. So brand guidelines can really be a lot of work, to say the least, but they are so satisfying when they're done because it's really meant to function as the one-stop shop for all the information about how the brand functions visually. So I'm happy to link some examples of the brand guidelines. Maybe we can add those into the show notes of projects that we've done recently so you can get a sense for how it functions. But really, consistently across the board, what we're looking for when it comes to brand guidelines is the about the brand, so who we are, the visual direction, the brand identity, logo, colors, fonts, patterns, icons, then branding application, social and digital, print and merch. It can even evolve as I'm looking through some other examples on my Canva, as far as including like, what are the guidelines for your packaging? For example, with Avenue 8, we want to make sure that we're calling out like why the colorways exist the way that they do, why the illustrations are in the certain placements, where the flavor names need to be, how that creates a guideline ongoing. We did the same thing for Hotel Lobby Candle and Hotel Lobby Home. So there's lots of different ways that you can use the brand guide as a reference document, not only internal, but as you work with other outside partners to really ensure that everyone is on the same page visually and that you're getting that good consistency from touch point to touch point. So that would pretty much do it for brand guidelines. Again, this is useful to you in an internal way. This isn't necessarily something that gets posted on your socials or like shared out with the masses, but the purpose of the brand guideline at the end of the day is to make it so that someone who knows nothing about the business can pick it up and understand how the brand is supposed to function visually. Not function operationally, not function internally, but purely a rule book for how the brand functions visually across as many touch points that exist. So that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this episode, don't forget to send it, save it, share it, leave a comment on Spotify or on YouTube. We would love to see your thoughts. And if you watched on YouTube and you got to see the visual version of the brand guidelines that are still a work in progress because we're wrapping up by the time of recording, I would love to get your thoughts. So thanks so much, and we will catch you next time. Bye.